wears their hat which way, except quarterbacks when they go to the podium. And that's basically about maturity and understanding and self-awareness, right?
Sure.
And I've said this for years. I don't think Dak has a great arm or is a great athlete, but his hyper maturity, he's an adult, yet non-emotional in big emotional moments. But he was getting sort of emotional yesterday because, right, like this is his last year guaranteed for the Dallas Cowboys. His contract will be up. And as usual, Dak was able to see through everything and land a comment on his future in Dallas. I'm not afraid to go into the market. Love it here, but not afraid. And I think Dak would actually have a bigger market than you think. I think he'd have a bigger market than Tom Brady at the end. I do. I think he'd have a bigger market than Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. I do. Russell, as we know, little cringy. Don't get that with Dak. A lot of drama with Aaron Rodgers. You don't get that with Dak. Tom Brady's age. Dak's only 31. Dak, you get no cringe, no age concerns, no maintenance, no drama, very productive, can win 12 games a year. His floor, 8 wins. His ceiling, 12. Probably not a Super Bowl. But, I mean, think of all these really talented, near the top of the draft quarterbacks. Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, a bit combative, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, competition and commitment issues. How much do they win? You know who wins? Jared Goff, Dak, Kirk Cousins, Jalen Hurts. The guys that don't give you a lot of drama. Justin Herbert's going to start winning a lot. Is that if you ask general managers, they're looking for a coach on the field. They're not looking for drama and maintenance and passive-aggressive. I mean, Green Bay moved off Aaron Rodgers, and he had just won several MVPs. Darkness retreats. The guy coaches GMs. They don't want to deal with any of that nonsense. And so Dak's maturity, this is what I've been banging on for years. Hat on forward, say the right thing, put a wet blanket on a potential fire, all this stuff. It's what GMs look at. I think Dak would have a really big market. I think it's highly probable that the Raiders and the Panthers and the Giants and maybe the Seahawks and the Titans would all be interested at the end of the season. So Dallas needs to know that. Oh, there'll be a market. It'll be bigger than Aaron's market. It'll be bigger than Tom's market. And you think, oh, that's crazy. He's 31, 12 wins, no drama, productive. Dak doesn't even have great weapons now, and he had the number 1 offense in the league. And you can't give McCarthy credit, right? He's a bum. Everybody thinks he's a bum. Remember, 30% of this league has chaos at quarterback. You never have that with Dak. His floor is 8-8. Here's another thing. It's not a great college quarterback draft next year. Here's another thing. If Tua and Jordan Love sign contracts, and they will, who's quarterback 2 on the market? There won't be any. It'll be Dak and Sam Darnold-ish players. So Dak's going to have market. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to overpay him. I don't have a problem. I don't like people that live in fear. Go to the college draft and draft somebody. But it's not a great college quarterback draft. It's okay. It's not great. There's not going to be a market outside of Jordan Love and Tua sign. And, you know, it's interesting. You can always tell your value in my business, your business, football business. What's your market when you're a free agent? What is your market? I think Dak's would be pretty big.
Okay, so let's talk about this because I think this is a pretty interesting point of discussion right now because it just seems to be getting more and more real about Dak leaving. And then when, and either way, whether he leaves or not, we're like in a position where we have to really evaluate who Dak is, right? Because he's either going to get paid a ton of money with Dallas or go somewhere else. I largely agree with what Colin is saying. I go back and forth so frequently on Dak in terms of what I think you can achieve with him and the circumstances that need to be behind him in order to achieve those things. I think he has maxed out with the Dallas Cowboys. This whole idea that there's potential with him and McCarthy or whoever and that roster that they're going to somehow bring it up to the next gear, and that they're going to win a Super Bowl is insane to me. It really is. It's genuinely insane to me. And I've said that so many times because people keep bringing it up, and I for the life of me, I genuinely can't make sense of it. I just don't know what another example is of a team or a quarterback or a coach where they're just like, we've seen them do the same thing for years, and then we're expecting them to be able to just like take it up the next level. I don't know why there's so much optimism at all with regards to that. So that just will always confuse me. But that aside, I do think that Dak is a really, really good quarterback, a good to great quarterback. I think there's confusion around who Dak is. People think that he's this great regular season quarterback, and then for whatever reason, he just chokes in the playoffs. And I just don't think that that's accurate. I think he gets outplayed, and I think he gets outcoached, and I think he's not as prepared. I don't think that the moment is just too big for him, and then he's just suddenly like, like calling hike, and he's like shaking, and he like can't throw the ball. Like, that's actually what choking is. People always say, they say this so frequently, and it's a huge pet peeve of mine, that anytime a player loses or a team loses, they say, oh, he choked in the playoffs. That's not what choking is. It's just losing. Choking is when you can't handle the moment. The moment is too big for you. Losing and failing is not choking. Players and teams fail all the time and lose all the time. It's not choking. Tom Brady has lost a handful of Super Bowls. He didn't choke those Super Bowls away. The teams that were beaten by Tom Brady they didn't choke. Okay? Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is actually a good example in this situation. Didn't make that throw that a lot of people think that if he did make that throw in the Super Bowl, they would have beat the Chiefs. He didn't choke. He just didn't make the throw. It's that simple. And to me, that's what happens with Dak. And I think maybe that's why people have this feeling of like, oh, if Dak can just not choke, they'd win. And it's like, what you're saying is just incompatible, because what you're saying is Dak just needs to continue to play perfect football at the highest level, and then he'll win. And you can say that essentially about every single quarterback, even a backup quarterback. If a backup quarterback just plays perfect football with each game that passes, they'll win a Super Bowl as well. So I just don't think it's even that fair to even lump that onto Dak, honestly. But I do think you can win a Super Bowl with Dak. I think Dak could have won a Super Bowl, and I'm going to use these examples, and I want to be very clear that when I throw out some of these examples, it's not that I'm saying that he's a better quarterback than the other teams, especially for some of the teams that I list that didn't win a Super Bowl. It's not like I'm saying, like, I'm going to use the Eagles as an example. I think Dak could win a Super Bowl with the 22 Eagles. It's not to say that he would have been better than Jalen Hurts, but it's just if Dak had that team, that coach Shane Steichen, that offense, that defense, that O-line, that defensive line, I think if Dak plays for that team 2 out of 3 years, he's going to win a Super Bowl. Just like I think Jalen would have won a Super Bowl. If they play that Super Bowl again, there's a great chance I think Jalen wins that Super Bowl. So I'm going to throw out some names. And again, I'm not saying that means that Dak's better than them or whatnot. But I think Dak would have or could have won a Super Bowl in 2019 with either the Chiefs or the 49ers. I think Dak could have won a Super Bowl with the Tyreek Hill Chiefs, I'll just say, right, when they kind of had that team. Probably not so much in the later years. Maybe in 22 against the Eagles. Maybe. That's a big maybe, though. I think, like I said, he could have won with the Eagles in 22. I think he could have won with the 49ers in 23. I think it would have been possible for him to win. I feel like that's probably the heart of it, those kind of teams. Maybe Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. I'd have to think about that a little bit more, because Tom Brady definitely did have to kind of elevate and bring some magic to that game as well. But again, so I think Dak is capable. I think when you give Dak, I think Dak could have won with I'll get to it, the Detroit Lions in 23. I think that's very potential. And again, to be very clear, it's not me saying that like Jared Goff or Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts held those teams back and that's why they lost. That's not what I'm saying. Can't be any more clear than that. So I just think that if you put Dak in a good situation with a good coach, you can win with him and you can win at a high level. But the problem is what Dak is commanding right now. And so if you have a good team or a good coach or even a great team with a good coach, Dak is not enough to bring you over that hump. That is what separates, say, a Patrick Mahomes, that he doesn't maybe need a perfect situation. But make no mistake about it, Patrick Mahomes still needs a lot of great things around him, right? He still has the Andy Reids and the Travis Kelce's and the great defenses around him. Like, all of those things still do matter. I mean, there's really no team, there's never really been a quarterback, at least in recent memory, where just like it was just a bad coach, bad team, bad receivers, poor defense, and the quarterback was just able to overcome all of that and carry a team to victory. It just doesn't happen. And yet, for whatever reason, we sometimes create these scenarios in our head and act like, you know, some of these quarterbacks just carry these teams, or a coach carries a team. Like, it's always a collaborative effort. And so I do think that you've reached the peak with a McCarthy level coach with Dak. We've already seen that now for like essentially all of Dak's career. I do think if Dak had like a Shane Steichen, a Sean McVay, a Matthew Stafford, a Ben Johnson, you know, any of those types of level of coaches, he would probably take a whole nother notch up. But again, it's difficult to do that at this point in his career, because if he goes to a team, they're going to have to pay so much money, or even if he just stays with Dallas, and it just now becomes hard to build that team. And by the time you can build that team, which will probably have to be largely in the draft, he's now going to be 34, 35. Like, it's just different now. Like, his window essentially is right now. He's probably not going to be any better than he is right now, right? Like, this is the heart of who he is. And so he has to be in a position to be on a team that's win now. So if he goes to another team, like Colin was saying, it's like, it's going to take a minute or two to build that team. But I do think that Dak is worthy of a rather large contract because of also the person who he is. I think he really is incredibly mature. And the more I watch football, the more that I just grow up, quite honestly. Like, I am actually very much like Colin in that regard. Like, I'm very drawn to the incredibly mature, calm, cool, and collected guy. The guy who just always says the right thing, who stays out of trouble, who doesn't talk back to the media, who's not combative, who's just who's fundamentally just a good person. Especially when you're the quarterback, when you're the front of that team. I mean, just look at what Mike has been doing. Look at what Ayuk's been doing. Look at Baker Mayfield in the beginning of his career, and he's settled down now for sure. But like, you know, compare that to a Dak Prescott, and it's night and day. And I can really, really appreciate that. At the end of the day, Dak Prescott is the type of person that I at least can feel confident and comfortable being the face of my franchise. And of course, if I'm a GM or coach, that really helps. Or an owner, it's like that feels good as well. So not only as a fan do you feel good knowing that Dak is in front there and representing you, and you just know that that's the good face forward. But if you're now actually making the decisions, actually signing your signature on a massive check, like, you can also feel good about that. You just know that he's not going to be a problem. And the truth is, we're still living in a football world where we have a lot of problems with these quarterbacks, you know, where it's just, there's such inconsistency, whether it's off the field or on the field, that we just don't know what to do, right? You just don't know what to do. There is a lot going on. And I think Baker Mayfield is probably the best, most recent example of that. And I don't want to harp on Baker because I know a lot of people love Baker. But that, to me, that is a good example, because you didn't really know what he was going to do on the field, and you didn't really know what he was going to say at the mic. And it's just like, it's stressful. It's exhausting. And I disagree with Colin about like the darkness retreat. If you want to say like Aaron is problematic, that's fine. But like, keep harping on this darkness retreat. The fact that he's trying to do other stuff to like build him up spiritually, I think is just kind of absurd. But I just think that at the end of the day, Dak is a safe bet. And if you're a team that needs to have a safe bet, that you just can't afford to hit the reset button because you've already been suffering for so long, like the Giants being a great example of that. They've been suffering for so long. If they have a chance just to get Dak rather than try to roll the dice again in the draft and potentially now do another 3, 4, 5 years of irrelevancy, like, yeah, then you just get Dak, right? Like, you do go out and get that quarterback that can have that stabilizing impact. You know, the Panthers, the Titans, the Cowboys, the Giants. Trying to think if there's any other random teams. You know, maybe Deshaun Watson ends up really just being an absolute bust. He's done. He's got nothing left, whether it's injuries, whether it's mentally, whatever it is. And I don't know if they can afford him because of that contract, but like, they go out and get Dak. Like, Dak is a justifiable option. he is, right? Like you can justify spending the money. In a perfect situation, you would want him to take less money so you can build that team because he is trying to command more money than the Patrick Mahomes. That is always the biggest problem with a Dak Prescott because, like I said, it just becomes very hard to not only build a team, but if you have a team, it's hard to maintain the team, as we're seeing right now with the Dallas Cowboys. They literally can't afford to pay all these players. And it's like, well, then what if you can't end up affording to pay these players? It's like, well, then what the heck do you do? Right? Like, and that's when you say, like, well, I need a quarterback to either take less money or I have to roll the dice and get a cheaper quarterback who's a little bit less, just not as good technically as maybe, say, a Dak, because we already know that this is the limits of what Dak can do. I think my last Hail Mary with Dak Prescott would be like, I wouldn't say Hail Mary, that's probably too strong, but like what I would truly love to see Dak with is with genuinely a top coach. And that has always been the biggest mistake that I think Jerry has made personally. I think he should have went out and tried to get Harbaugh. Ben Johnson, I would have rolled the dice on him. Obviously, I know he doesn't have any head coaching experience, but it's still worth it. I'd rather see what Dak can do with Ben Johnson rather than McCarthy. Because to me, then that would have showed me a lot. I would have been like, all right, Dak, we have a new head coach. He's worked wonders in Detroit, worked wonders with Goff. This is it. Let's see what you got with him. And then at least after this year, then I could be like, actually, wow, Dak really took an even another step. Like, okay, McCarthy was a limiting factor. It's just more data. What we're going to get is just repeat data that we've had. So what can I do with repeat data? I already know 1 + 1 = 2. I don't have to keep reading that over and over and over again. So that's what if I was him, if I was Jerry and the Cowboys, that's what I would have done. I would have went out and got Ben Johnson, Harbaugh, even Bill Belichick, anything but what he did. I'm trying to think if there was any other available coaches that I would think that could actually elevate Dak, if it's at all possible. Because I do think a good coach would be able to bring Dak up to another level, or at the very least, not be out coached come playoffs times and make it a closer game. Make it, so they don't get blown out by the Green Bay Packers. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think Dak Prescott is worthy of a massive contract and bigger than, a bigger market than what Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers got, as Colin put it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.